Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Welcome to another video. So, as I think a lot of you guys know if you follow me on Twitter or have watched my videos, I've really been enjoying The Mandalorian. I get excited for every episode, unlike basically anything else in Star Wars. I've even been staying up to watch them, and they air at 4 o'clock in the morning my time. With that being said, I figure that I might as well make videos on the content that I'm enjoying so much. So, every week, in the 3 or so days after The Mandalorian comes out, at least by Monday I'd guess, I'm going to do some sort of reaction, lore video, breakdown, whatever, on the week's episode. Also, although it won't be the main focus of the video, at the end I will also do a quick review, because that's something a lot of you guys have been asking for. Now, it might not necessarily be in the title of the video, so if you're wondering what I thought, just look for that week's Mandalorian content. Now, I'm actually incredibly excited to announce that this entire series, moving forward until the end of the season at least, is being sponsored by Veet Ramen, a company which I've worked with in the past and which I personally really love. So much so that if you go to my Twitter, you see the hashtag blessed noodle merchant in my bio. So I love Veet Ramen most of all because it's, well, delicious. Even if they weren't paying me to do these promos, which they are, I would probably do them anyway because of the free boxes of ramen I get. So right off the bat, I'll be real with you guys. Veet Ramen is more expensive than your average 99-cent noodle. For one, it's made in the United States, but it's also 60% larger than the standard packaged ramen. And in my experience, it's definitely a meal in and of itself. Still, Veet Ramen is definitely cheaper than takeout and obviously healthier. Another thing is that Veet Ramen treats its employees really well, which to me is extremely important. They offer a living wage, lots of mental health days and paid time off, and you can find information about all of that, including the nutrition, the 50% less sodium they have compared to other brands, and their flavors on the website, which I'll link down below. Also, if you use the link and the code EckhartsLadder, you'll get 15% off of your order. Now, there are different flavors. You can go for a variety pack if you want, and I would personally recommend that, but if you just want one flavor, the garlic pork is really delicious. Anyway, very much thank you to Veet Ramen for sponsoring this series. So let's talk about The Mandalorian, and let's talk about world building. In my first review, I talked a lot about the fact that The Mandalorian really captures the essence of what makes me fall in love with Star Wars, and especially the world building of A New Hope. It's a lived in, it's a gritty, it's an eccentric, and a fun universe. But there's also been a new element to the world building that I've started to like. And we saw bits of this with the trailers even for The Mandalorian, but episode 3 touches on something and threatens to actually, if not fix, significantly improve one of the sequel trilogy's biggest issues, the total collapse and fall of the Empire. So in a recent video especially, I've talked about how the Empire totally crumbling after Jakku really makes no sense. I compared and contrasted it with Star Wars Legends. In the old EU, the Empire declined so significantly that they were essentially a minor power in the galaxy, at least for a while. However, this did take some time and was largely explained by a series of major losses, including Operation Shadow Hand, and most importantly, Imperial fracturing and factionalism. The idea was that Imperial warlords, despite still using assets of the Empire and perhaps quoting some greater allegiance to the Empire, generally served themselves and were often against other Imperial factions. Later, the Empire would unify into a remnant, and that would carry the flag forward throughout history. Canon hasn't quite been the same, although technically some warlords have been mentioned. The idea of an Imperial remnant or Imperial remnants has been given mostly just lip service, if that even. And what's more, it seems like most of these remnants really fell out of existence after the Battle of Jakku, so the fall of the Empire happens almost completely within 1 year. Some of this can be explained by the exodus into the unknown regions and the founding of the First Order, but still, it's a major issue with world building that I think The Mandalorian is taking some steps towards fixing. What The Mandalorian really shows us, and what I hope it continues to show us, is that although the Empire has fallen as the dominant galactic power, the New Republic is not all-reaching. It exists, yes, in the core. We get a quote about that directly in episode 3, but there is not only a major power vacuum remaining in the galaxy, but still Imperial factions. Of course, some did leave to the unknown regions or were killed in Jakku, but the Empire still has a major presence within parts of the galaxy. Major may be overstating things, but I think we'll come to see that although the Empire seems a little shabby, they still have ships, they still have stormtroopers, they still have forces. From this point on, I'm going to move forward with spoilers, by the way, so if you haven't seen episode 3, maybe stop. But I think we'll see the weight of the Empire come against the Mandalorian as he tries to escape and run off with the Baby Yoda creature. The problem really started with the Aftermath series, and I know I'm rambling a bit, but it wasn't made any better by books like Bloodline, which seemed to suggest a relatively conflict-free 3 decades or so before the sequel trilogy. I think The Mandalorian has the opportunity to show that although there might not have been something like the Thrawn campaign, I just think that's too much action to not have gotten some mention yet. The Empire did not just disappear. This show has the unique opportunity to show how the remaining Imperial factions struggled with the fact that all of their resources are somehow missing, that all of these ships, these people, these assets, which should still be around, just somehow aren't. However, while that's happening, I also want to see the Imperial Remnant faction, or perhaps factions, struggling for power. I want to see them trying to assert their dominance in the Outer Rim and the power vacuum, which the New Republic currently seems incapable of closing. So yeah, the Empire is gone. As a government and as a major power, it's gone. But, as we hear specifically, there are still warlords around. Although they don't rule, there is power, and I hope we learn throughout this series that maybe there's even more than we've been led to believe so far. The Mandalorian is always going to be small scale. This is a very, very small part of the Outer Rim, which itself is kind of like the backwater of the galaxy. So will we get a lot of information about the state of the Empire across the galaxy? Probably not, but what we might see is that even in this sort of confined space, the Empire still has a presence. We know that later on we're getting Moff Gideon, and we see from the trailers that he has even his own Death Troopers, and his Stormtroopers also look a little less crappy. So in a way that the Mandalorian itself is sort of giving an insight into the Star Wars universe on a personal level, like A New Hope did, my hope is that it gives a similar insight to galactic politics, and it helps to fix one of the major plot points which has bothered me about the sequel trilogy. But that's all I have to say about that. Before I leave though, as promised, I do want to give a brief review of episode 3. As you guys know, I really loved episode 1 and 2. 2 especially hooked me for a reason I can't even really explain. And I've gone back and forth on where I'd place 3. Although the first time I watched it, I really liked it, I probably would have put it as my least favorite of the 3 episodes, but after subsequent viewings, it's rose in my rankings and returned, so I really don't know. One thing that I really liked, especially given that this is a pretty limited series, is that it didn't make us wait for the Mandalorian to rescue Baby Yoda. It was fairly obvious that eventually he was going to go back for him, and I was very thankful when he turned off his engines on his ship and just went back. There was a bit of an issue with pacing. I don't know whether it was because there was a different director or what, but I felt like this episode could have been about 10 minutes longer perhaps, because it was missing a bit of the atmosphere of the first episode especially. I also thought the performances from the actors wasn't quite as good. The lines were cheesy, but with Star Wars that doesn't really bother me. At the end too, I thought the music mixing was a little too quiet. The scene with the Mandalorians was great, but it could have been even more epic if the music had been louder. Just a little thing in editing. All in all, though, I still thought it was absolutely great. I think it's cool how they've grounded this series that feels like the original trilogy, but are bringing in prequel assets. We have, of course, the battle droids, and it looks like they're trying to clone Baby Yoda. We know that the Doctor has a Camino cloning symbol on his arm, and it seems like he was taking a sample. So it's sort of integrating the OT and the PT in a way that I don't think has ever really been done, which is awesome. I really hope we get more of that. I think it'd be very cool to visit Camino or other prequel era planets. I think it's very likely that the Mandalorian is saved by a Jedi when he's being attacked by that super battle droid. A lot of people have said that it should be Yoda who saves him, but I disagree like 1000%. I think that would be pretty nonsensical. Yoda was out on the battlefield sometimes, but not that often. And I think he should see himself in the Baby Yoda. I don't think he should see a version of his savior. I think the whole point is he went back for Baby Yoda because he recognized his vulnerability. He recognized that he was an innocent child. I think he needs to be introduced to a hero that he can relate to and that he can perhaps model himself after, if only a little bit. He's never going to be a 100% clean-cut Jedi, but I think the Mandalorian eventually is going to be more of a protagonist and a good protagonist than anything else. It would be awesome, and I said this before the show even premiered, if they could get Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen to take up their roles just for a brief scene. Don't mention them by name, but just have one of them be the Jedi that saves the Mandalorian. Probably Ewan, because we're getting the Kenobi series on Disney Plus anyway, and it would be a very cool tie-in. Obviously, the two have aged, but not past the point even close where makeup couldn't make them look believably as they were during the Clone Wars. All in all, though, a really great episode. Just talking about it makes me even more excited for it. I hope we do get some longer ones. The sort of snappier length worked really well with 1 and 2, but I did feel it a bit in number 3. And I think for some really interesting plot progression, we're just going to need more time because we're 3 episodes done out of 8. Of course, this is only season 1 of season 2, but still. Final things to mention is that, of course, I really liked the atmosphere and the action scenes. I'm still iffy on the bits in the Mandalorian compound, but I don't mind them certainly. I wasn't a huge fan of that whistling birds thing just because they had introduced it like 10 minutes ago, and I thought the flying Mandalorian at the end was a little bit goofy. But as you guys can tell, I am nitpicking. I am so excited for episode 4. I'm sure I'll be staying up late to watch it like I did last time, and I hope you guys are interested in what I have to say because again, this is the beginning of a weekly series that I will be doing until the end of season 1 and hopefully after. I'm not sure if every video will be as rambly as this one. I did this totally without a script. Some might be scripted. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Anyway guys, that's all I have to say for today. Until next time, have a great day and may the Force be with you.